You're gonna get more than you bargained for! I'm your goddamn partner!
There was a time when Karen Allen was everywhere, her face lighting up movie screens across the world. From the fearless Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark to her warm charm in Starman and Scrooged, she embodied the spirit of the late 70s and 80s like few others could. But then, almost as quickly as she arrived, she seemed to vanish. Hollywood moved on, and fans were left wondering, what the hell happened to Karen Allen? Her sudden disappearance wasn't the result of scandal or failure. It was something far more human, a quiet rebellion against the relentless machinery of fame. While many of her co-stars chased bigger paychecks and brighter lights, Karen chose peace, purpose, and creativity away from Hollywood's chaos. Yet, her absence from the screen made her story even more mysterious. In recent years, she's resurfaced in interviews, small films, and most notably, her return to the Indiana Jones franchise. But that comeback came with its own heartbreak. Fans were thrilled to see her back as Marion Ravenwood in Dial of Destiny, but the role was fleeting, a bittersweet reminder of what Hollywood once was and what it had lost. So today, we're uncovering the truth behind Karen Allen's quiet retreat, her life after fame, and how she found fulfillment far beyond the glare of Hollywood lights. This is the untold story of a woman who walked away, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Karen Allen's story doesn't begin in Hollywood's glittering studios, but in the quiet suburbs of rural Illinois, where she grew up far from the spotlight. Born in Carrollton in 1951, she was the daughter of a university professor and a social worker, an upbringing that emphasized curiosity, intellect, and humility rather than fame. In her youth, Allen wasn't the type to dream of stardom. She was introspective, creative, and deeply fascinated by storytelling, often spending hours writing, drawing, and performing for herself. Her first brush with the arts came not from film, but from theater. After studying art and design at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, she stumbled upon an experimental theater performance that changed her life forever. She later said, "I walked in as one person and walked out another. I knew this was what I wanted to do." That moment set her on a path that would take her from obscure New York stages to the grandest adventure cinema had ever known. Allen's early years in acting were anything but glamorous. She juggled small plays, commercials, and part-time jobs just to make rent. Yet her natural talent, an effortless mix of vulnerability and strength, began to attract attention. In 1978, she landed her breakout role as Katie in National Lampoon's Animal House. The film became a cultural phenomenon, and suddenly Hollywood was calling. But Karen wasn't just another pretty face in a comedy hit. She had depth, warmth, and an authenticity that set her apart. Her true stardom arrived 3 years later, when Steven Spielberg cast her as Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981. At a time when most female roles in action films were limited to damsels in distress, Karen brought something new. Marion wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was tough, witty, and every bit Indiana Jones's equal. Her chemistry with Harrison Ford was electric, making their on-screen romance feel real, alive, and timeless. Audiences instantly fell in love with her. Critics praised her as the new face of the strong woman in Hollywood, independent yet emotional, charming yet grounded. Raiders of the Lost Ark became one of the highest-grossing films of the decade, and Karen Allen seemed destined for superstardom. Offers poured in from every direction, dramas, romances, thrillers. She had her pick. Over the next few years, Allen starred in several memorable projects that showcased her range. In Starman, 1984, opposite Jeff Bridges, she gave a heartbreaking and deeply human performance as a widow who learns to love again. The role earned her critical acclaim and remains one of her most beloved performances. Then came Scrooged, 1988, with Bill Murray, where her warmth and sincerity balanced the film's biting humor perfectly. By the end of the 1980s, Karen Allen had it all: fame, respect, and an enviable career. Yet, unlike many of her peers, she never seemed consumed by it. She attended premieres with grace, gave thoughtful interviews, and stayed grounded in a world known for ego and excess. But beneath her calm surface, she was quietly questioning everything. Hollywood, for all its glitz, began to feel like a place of endless noise, a machine that demanded constant performance, not just on screen, but in life. Karen Allen, who had always valued authenticity and simplicity, found herself yearning for something real, something quieter. What happened next would shock her fans. At the height of her success, Karen Allen began to step back from the spotlight, and few could have predicted how far she would go to reclaim her sense of peace. By the early 1990s, Karen Allen had achieved what most actors only dream of: critical praise, a string of hit films, and the love of audiences around the world. Yet instead of using that momentum to cement her place among Hollywood's elite, she did something unthinkable. She walked away. To many, it seemed like a mystery. Karen Allen wasn't fading because of failed projects or controversy. She was still admired, still sought after. But fame for her had never been the goal. Behind the scenes, Allen had begun to feel disillusioned with the pace and politics of Hollywood. The roles being offered to her were predictable and shallow, a far cry from the layered characters that had made her famous. "I didn't want to play the same woman over and over again," she once explained. "I wanted to live a full life, not just pretend to live one on screen." That realization came around the same time her personal life began to evolve. In 1988, she married actor Cale Brown, and 2 years later, they welcomed their son, Nicholas. Motherhood transformed her perspective. Karen didn't want to raise her child in the artificial bubble of Los Angeles. She longed for nature, creativity, and the kind of balance fame rarely allows. So she packed her things and moved east, far from the flashing cameras and red carpets. She settled in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, a quiet, artsy community surrounded by trees, small theaters, and independent minds. There, she began to rebuild her life, not as a celebrity, but as a woman rediscovering herself. Allen started a new chapter focused on simplicity and creativity. She opened a textile studio, Karen Allen Fiber Arts, which became both a business and a sanctuary. What began as a personal hobby evolved into a thriving workshop known for its hand-woven scarves and intricate knitwear. For Karen, weaving became a form of storytelling, a way to express herself without scripts, cameras, or critics. "It's meditative," she said. "It's another kind of art, one that connects me to the real world." While she stepped away from Hollywood, she never fully abandoned acting. Instead, she began choosing smaller, more meaningful projects: independent films, stage plays, and teaching roles. She directed at the Berkshire Theater Festival, worked with local artists, and even taught at Bard College at Simons Rock. Her choices reflected a woman who no longer sought fame, but fulfillment. Fans and the media often wondered why such a talented actress would leave the spotlight behind. Some speculated that she had been pushed out by an industry that undervalued women as they aged. Others saw her retreat as a quiet protest, a rejection of Hollywood's obsession with youth and glamour. In truth, it was both and neither. Karen Allen wasn't running away. She was walking toward something better: authenticity, independence, and control over her art. When asked years later if she ever regretted stepping back, her answer was simple: not for a moment. She had found peace in the simplicity of life, raising her son, creating art, performing in small theaters, and connecting with her community. While other stars chased awards and headlines, Karen Allen was finding joy in teaching, knitting, and rediscovering what happiness really meant. Her retreat from fame wasn't a disappearance. It was a transformation. But Hollywood has a way of pulling its legends back. And decades later, that call would come again, in the form of one of cinema's most iconic heroes. After more than 2 decades of living quietly in Massachusetts, Karen Allen had built a peaceful rhythm, running her fiber arts studio, teaching young actors, and performing in the occasional stage production. She wasn't chasing fame anymore, but then in 2007, a call came that changed everything. It was from Steven Spielberg. The message was short and thrilling. Indiana Jones was coming back. And they wanted Marion Ravenwood. For Karen Allen, returning to that role felt like coming home. She hadn't played Marion since Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981, yet the character had never truly left her. Marion was bold, fearless, and fiercely independent, much like Karen herself. When Spielberg and George Lucas explained the premise of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, 2008, she was excited to step back into the adventure, this time as a mother and a partner to the aging, world-weary Indy. The film's release was met with mixed reactions, but Karen's performance stood out. Critics praised her for bringing warmth and emotional grounding to the story. Audiences were thrilled to see her and Harrison Ford reunited after 27 years. For many fans, she was the heart of the movie, the missing piece that gave Indy's story a sense of completion. After the film's release, Allen returned once again to her quiet life in the Berkshires. She spoke about how special it felt to revisit Marion, calling it a chance to see how life and time had shaped both of us. And once again, she disappeared from the public eye, content to let Hollywood keep spinning while she lived life on her own terms. Then, almost 15 years later, she got another call, one she never expected. Lucasfilm was making Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny 2023, and Harrison Ford would return one final time. Karen's reaction was joyful but cautious. "I hoped Marion would have a real place in the story," she later admitted. When the movie was released, fans were surprised and a little disappointed to see that Marion's role was far smaller than anyone anticipated. She appeared only briefly near the end, reuniting with Indy in a touching scene that hinted at forgiveness and enduring love. While audiences found it emotional, Karen confessed in interviews that she was disappointed by how little her character was used. In a candid interview, she said, "I thought I would be more a part of the story, but I'm glad they found a way to bring Marion and Indy together again in the end." It was a bittersweet return, one that closed a circle, but not quite in the way she had imagined. Her honesty resonated with fans. Many agreed that Marion Ravenwood, one of cinema's most iconic heroines, deserved a bigger send-off. Yet, even with limited screen time, Karen's presence brought warmth and humanity to the film's final moments. That brief reunion between Indy and Marion reminded audiences of what made Raiders of the Lost Ark magical in the first place. Two imperfect people bound by adventure, love and time. In the months following Dial of Destiny's release, Karen reflected on her journey. She spoke about how grateful she was to have been part of something that touched generations, and how she had no regrets about the path she chose. Hollywood may have forgotten her for a time, but her fans never did. And when she appeared on screen again, even for a few minutes, it felt like reuniting with an old friend and one who had aged gracefully without losing her spark. It wasn't the triumphant Hollywood comeback many expected. It was something better, authentic, emotional, and true to who Karen Allen had always been. As the bright lights of Hollywood began to fade from her everyday life, Karen Allen made a choice few stars of her era dared to make. She walked away on her own terms. While others fought for roles, Karen found solace in a simpler existence, one that reflected who she truly was beneath the red carpets and studio spotlights. After decades in front of the camera, she shifted her focus to what she called the quiet work of living. In the mid-1990s, Karen settled in the Berkshires of western Massachusetts, a world away from the hustle and pressure of Los Angeles. There, she founded Karen Allen Fiber Arts, a small textile company dedicated to handcrafted knitwear. It was an unexpected turn for a woman once considered one of Hollywood's most promising leading ladies, but for Karen, it was a return to her roots. She had always been drawn to art, creativity, and authenticity. Working with natural fibers, designing clothes, and building a business from the ground up gave her something Hollywood never could: peace. Still, she never fully disappeared from the screen. Over the years, she returned for select projects, roles that resonated with her heart rather than her wallet. One of those was the long-awaited reunion with Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, 2008. Fans around the world were overjoyed to see Marion Ravenwood and Indy together again after nearly 3 decades. Karen brought warmth and humor to the film, reminding everyone that her spark hadn't dimmed one bit. Even later, in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny 2023, her brief but emotional appearance moved audiences to tears. While it was a small scene, it carried enormous weight, symbolizing not just Marion and Indy's enduring love, but also Karen Allen's lifelong connection to a role that defined her career. Off-screen, Karen continued to explore her artistic side. She taught acting at Bard College at Simon's Rock, mentoring young performers who reminded her of her early days in the 1970s. For her, success was no longer about fame or fortune, it was about meaning. She once said, "I was never interested in being a celebrity. I wanted to live creatively and truthfully." Her decision to step away wasn't without challenges. Hollywood, as it often does, had moved on. Offers dwindled, and she faced the quiet loneliness of being forgotten by an industry that worships youth. But Karen didn't let bitterness take root. Instead, she used that time to nurture herself, her son Nicholas, and the life she built away from the noise. Those who've met her in recent years describe a woman at peace, graceful, grounded, and humble. She still attends film festivals occasionally, speaking about her experiences with genuine warmth. She doesn't chase the spotlight. She welcomes it when it finds her. Karen Allen's journey isn't a story of downfall or tragedy. It's one of evolution. She didn't fade because she failed. She transformed because she grew. In an industry obsessed with youth and relevance, she chose authenticity over applause. Today, she remains a reminder that not all Hollywood endings happen on screen. Some are written quietly, in the rhythm of a small-town workshop, in the laughter of a classroom, or in the gentle act of creating something beautiful with your own hands. For fans who still wonder, what the hell happened to Karen Allen? The answer is simple. She found what so many in Hollywood never do: contentment. She may not dominate the headlines or walk red carpets anymore, but in her own way, Karen Allen still shines, brighter than ever.